We're not the suits that talk football. We're the dudes that know football. And you've just crossed over into the trend zone. Casey here with Dave. We are the football dudes. Dave, are you ready, bro?
Oh, yeah. You got that right, my friend.
All right. It is an area which we call the trend zone. It's Wednesday, December 18th, coming to you from Los Angeles, California. It is a beautiful, Dave. You said 68, but I'm going to
No.
go ahead and say 81 degrees in the Sherm
Woo!
today.
It's 80 over here on the west side, Casey. 80.
Heat wave.
Beautiful sunny day out there. It's lovely.
Crazy. December weather. You know what I'm
That's
talking
right.
about.
Christmas in LA.
Yeah, speaking of talking about in today's episode, an absolutely brutal injury for the Lions. Will it end their run to the Super Bowl? I don't
Ugh.
know.
Oh, boy.
Can a change at QB save the Dirty Birds from a free fall? And playoff spots are filling up fast. We'll tell you who else can clinch this weekend. Got a little survivor. Our go back fantasy starts of the week and all of the awesome games from the upcoming week. But Dave, you know we can't take a trip into the zone without a tasty nug for the peoples. What you got?
Yeah, this is a beauty case. There has not been a single shutout in the NFL this season. That has never happened through 15 weeks of the NFL. So that is an amazing situation. Last year, by this point, there were already 6 shutouts, and then one more came in week 17 and 18. So the fewest points any team has put up this year is just 3 points. That's happened 5 times. Nobody shut out, though. Last year, 17 times a team scored 3 or fewer points through this point in the season. So more scoring is what the NFL has wanted for a while now, and they are getting it. In fact, the overall score is up by 1 point per team. The average is 22.8 from what it was last year, 21.8. So scoring isn't up, and that's good for fantasy, and that's good for entertainment value, and that's good for the NFL.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's up. It actually feels like it's down a bit. Maybe the new dynamic kick has a little bit of something to do with that. Maybe
Or a
averaging an
handful of
extra
those
point.
teams that are just putting up huge numbers, right? That are
Mhm.
skewing it.
Who knows?
No
But
shutouts, though, baby.
nope, that's crazy.
Yep,
That
not
is
so.
so awesome. All right, speaking of awesome, the Trend Zone, the pod you're listening to right now, available for subscription on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, TuneIn, Stitcher, Blueberry, or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Dave, let's get into the top trending story. Chief Nation was freaking out last week when they saw this hit, but maybe those worries are dissipating just a little bit.
Yeah, it is a high ankle sprain, but it's a mild one for Mahomes. So look for him to play through it um, and not be too set back. He said the last one that he suffered, which was in the playoffs there, that one was significantly worse. So I think he's going to be fine. It's not time to panic, Red fans.
Yeah, and as soon as they lock up the number one seed, if they do, you might see
Yeah.
them shut him down for just a little bit.
All
And
right.
the Chiefs with Carson Wentz doesn't sound as terrifying to the rest of the league, dude.
Yeah. Of course, the Chargers have already played him twice.
Yeah, yeah, you get to miss all that.
Yeah.
Now an injury with way more significance and just a
Mm,
whole brutal level, dude. And it seems like the Detroit is getting dismantled with all these
yeah.
injuries, but this is one of the biggest ones so far.
Yeah. Tons of them I'll get through real fast. But first, the big one here. This is such a bummer. David Montgomery, his first season there with the Lions is over. He's got an MCL injury that's going to require surgery. So that will put him out, obviously, for the rest of the year. He's maybe holding out hope that he could be back for the Super Bowl. I don't, come on now. That's
Mm-mm.
not going to work. They also have lost a crap load of other dudes. Aleem McNeil, defensive tackle, he's got a torn ACL. That's out for the season for him, obviously. Cornerback Carlton Davis, he's got a fractured jaw. That's going to keep him out for 6 weeks minimum. And maybe he'll be back in time for a Super Bowl or something. But Khalil Dorsey, he's a DB. He's also injured. So the list of players for Detroit that are injured, I mean, it's extensive. Dudes on IR in the 20s and 30s at this point. Yet they're still killing it out there on the field.
Yeah, and luckily they have Jameer Gibbs as the other back there,
Yeah,
lots of productivity, and
big
that
time.
offensive line staying pretty healthy too, and that's kind of been the catalyst for the success of these Detroit Rock City Lions. But Dave, a quarterback not having so much success, Kirk is getting benched for the Falcons.
This is a shocker to me, but the Falcons are looking for a spark after 5 crappy games from Kirk Cousins. 4 of them were losses, and they did sneak by the Raiders there. But, they're giving Michael Penix Jr. a chance, obviously. He was, I believe, the 8th pick in the draft. He's certainly a talented guy. But I don't know, when you're this close to the playoffs and a playoff run is right there within your grasp, that it's the right time to move on from the veteran quarterback. I don't know if this is a switch that's kind of thought to be for the rest of the year, or it's just, hey, just a 1-game aberration. I'm not sure. I just don't understand what they're thinking here. I would keep Cousins in there, ride this thing out.
Yeah, it seems weird to do it at this point in the season. Just a couple weeks left, and you're also asking a lot of Michael Penix Jr. to come in week 16 and be like, okay, here you go. Get us to the playoffs. Yeah. But if he comes in and does, the legend will grow, and who knows? But boy, that is a lot of cabbage wrapped up.
Woo!
In
Yep.
Kirk
The money
Cousins.
that they gave Cousins, no question.
Anybody else benching a quarterback this weekend?
Yeah, that would be the Titans. They're going to go ahead and send Levis to the bench there, and Mason Rudolph will get the start. I don't know about this one either, Casey. To be honest with you, I'm not the coach of either of these squads, but I would want to see what we have with Levis, maybe ride that out a little bit longer. I do think Mason Rudolph gives them a better chance to win, but do they really want to win? They have 3 wins on the season.
No.
Maybe they would want a higher draft pick, and if Mason Rudolph rallies them and they get a win or 2 here to finish the season, I don't think that's beneficial for the overall picture again, what do you have in Levis? He was a 2nd-round pick. I still think, you want to see him kind of get the experience and maybe rally himself rather than just, watch from the sideline.
Well, and also, dude, they got rid of Malik Willis a little too much, and he's had great success when he's been thrown into action for the Packers this year. So you want to make that mistake again. So, this is a little bit of a head scratcher. Yep. If you're losing with Levis, that's a pretty good deal. I don't think you want to win, but you also need to evaluate your QB play. So, we will see what happens, but another head scratcher. All right, Dave. NFL using that flex appeal to give us some better games coming up, bro. What we got?
Yeah, they switched a handful of games in week 17 to Saturday. There was a pool of them that were on Sunday that they were talking about switching, but I'm pretty stoked on this. The early game, it'll be 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 o'clock Pacific, is Chargers-Patriots. Not a great matchup, but we get to see my Chargers in prime time again. Also, right after that, the 1:30 West Coast kickoff, 4:30 Eastern, is Broncos-Bengals, and then the evening game is Cardinals-Rams. All of these games feature teams that are on the kind of peripheral of the playoffs versus another team that's maybe not as much in the playoff mix. But Cardinals, Rams, who knows? I mean, everything's at stake for those squads. Certainly, the Rams are right there in the mix. Broncos in the mix. Chargers in the mix. It's all for playoff positioning.
Yeah, Bengals, I mean, who knows if they're going to be dead by the time this game gets here, but they have a little glimmer of hope, a little taste of life. Let's see what happens there.
Yeah.
All right, Dave, you just mentioned playoff implications for some of these teams. We have some teams clinched, and we have some that are dead.
Yes.
Get us to the clinchers first.
In the AFC, Kansas City's the AFC West winner, Buffalo's the AFC East winner, Houston AFC South winner, and then Pittsburgh has clinched themselves a playoff spot. In the NFC, nobody has actually clinched any divisions there, strangely, but Philadelphia, Detroit, Minnesota, they've all gotten themselves a guaranteed spot in the playoffs. Eliminated from the playoffs in the AFC, we already had all of these teams from last week: New England, Las Vegas, Cleveland, Jacksonville, the Jets, and Tennessee. NFC, we also had New York Giants last week. Now we add to that the Bears and the Carolina Panthers. Pour one out for those folks, Casey, and for those fan bases.
Man, and remember when everybody's like, the Bears are a playoff team. They're going to the playoffs with Caleb, this and that.
It was fun in the beginning.
Yeah, it was good for a hot second. And ever since Homeboy was hyping up the crowd there against the Commanders before the Hail Mary, it's been, I don't think they've won since it.
That has been an omen that really sent them in the wrong direction.
Brutes.
Yep.
Okay. We have a couple teams that can get in on Sunday. It's a little convoluted.
Yeah.
Dave, give these people the cliff notes.
Yeah, I'll try and get it short and sweet here. 5 teams really can get in. Mostly it's important that they just win. There are certainly other permutations that can help them, but the Packers could be in with a win and some help. The Washington Commanders also could clinch if they get in, and they need a combination of other things happen. The AFC could be entirely locked up. Like all of the playoff spots could be sealed up if the teams that have 6 wins lose. Then they would basically be eliminated. They're 6-8. They would be 6-9. But Ravens and Broncos are in with wins. The Chargers could get in with a win and some other help there. The Chiefs would actually wrap up the top seed in the conference with a win and a Bills loss or some other garbage. And then the Steelers would be able to clinch the AFC North if they beat the Ravens. So we'll see. The Ravens, Ravens are probably in the playoffs, if not already in the playoffs right now.
Yeah.
I can't remember if
They're close.
They're not
They're
officially in, but let's go ahead and pencil them in.
Well, a lot of the teams that are clinched or have an opportunity, they're doing it because they are getting some tremendous performances in reality and in fantasy. So, Dave, it is time for total fantasy domination. Dave, give me a quarterback.
Jared Goff of the Lions and the Purple Sabbath. Almost 500 yards, 494 yards, 5 touchdown passes, 13 rush yards. Crazy game.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, you throw 5 touchdowns and you win. Last week, you throw 5 touchdowns and you lose. Who knows what's going on with that? Crazy. And how about James Conner? No wonder the Purple Sabbath are kicking so much ass. And congratulations to little Juniper Jacobs coming into the world.
Yeah.
Just to watch the Vikings die in the playoffs. But James Conner for those Sabbath, 110 rush yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and 28 receiving yards.
How about Devontae Adams, the receiver for this week, featured by the Bolt Action and the Jets, of course. 198 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 2-point conversion.
I think he did all that shit in the second half, too. And
crazy.
More Bolt action. No wonder these 2 teams are the top in our league. Sam Laporta, baby, 111 receiving yards for the Bolt action.
Yeah.
Those guys sat the bye week last week, but now they're back in the mix. All right, Dave. Fantasy Go Back starts of the week. Was there anything you could have done?
Now, I didn't even look at the final score, Casey, after Thursday, when I had Kupp and Juwan Jennings, and I just got 3.1 points there. I knew it was a doomed scenario, but I knew going into that Monday night doubleheader that if Jordan Addison got me 63 points, I was in business. And that's what, my fantasy go back would be go back to the beginning of the year and not draft Christian McCaffrey and the other injury-riddled dudes that I picked this year. It was an absolutely doomed fantasy season. It was a nightmare.
Yeah, well, just since you didn't watch the end of that, Foul Boys 130.56.
Yeah.
Lightning Strike 69.45. Just,
Close.
just to keep it there. And you know what? I don't think I could have done anything else either. I got 31 out of my Chiefs defense, 25 out of my Packers. So I played it clean. And Dave, in both my leagues, I had one of my best weeks. I built a team for the playoffs. The problem was I just didn't make it to the playoffs.
Of course.
Yeah. Of course, it's the time for the team to start heating up. It never fails.
Consolation. Thank goodness for the consolation group, right?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, where I am still alive, though, is Survivor 3 Strikes. Dave, we know you've been dead for a while. No need to rehash that. Who was last week's most popular pick?
Baltimore over the Giants. That was nearly half. 48% of the people had that one in the Yahoo leagues.
Yeah, I was one of them. I saved my Ravens until this late in the season. And Dave, what are the most popular incorrect picks?
It was actually a tie between the 13th and 14th most selected picks. It was Carolina beating Dallas. That was 0.32. So like 1/3% of the people died that way. And then the Chargers over Tampa, another 0.32, 1/3% of the people that were forced to take one of those 2 situations. They bit the dust.
Crazy. And then moving forward, what are the best scenarios to stay alive this week?
Yeah, Green Bay over New Orleans looks really good. Almost 40% of the folks. If that's not for you, or you've used up that team, of course. Atlanta over the Giants, more than 25% of the people there, and Buffalo over New England, that's almost 17%. So those are the real obvious choices there. Pick Green Bay, Atlanta, or Buffalo.
Well, now Hot Atlanta with Michael Penix Jr. starting, that might make that a
Ooh,
little bit
a
kinkier.
little sketchier, right?
Yeah, we are gonna get into that, dude, because it is time for the game previews, baby. It is week 16.
Week 16.
Yeah, week 16, Dave.
It's slipping away. Slipping away, man.
We are getting to it, man. It is the middle
Holy
of
moly.
December. You better be playing your best football. We're going to go ahead and get this started with a huge game on Thursday night in our backyard. It is the
Oh,
Denver Broncos at our Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers 3-point favorites in this one. Dave, what are they going to do to turn this thing around?
yeah, speaking of playing your best football, that is not our Los Angeles Chargers right now. They have really stunk it up, lost 3 of the last 4, and have played some
Ugh.
really like in absentee, like they're just missing in action here. Chargers dropped to 8-6, completely blown out. Their first real blowout of the season. All the other games were competitive. This one was a disastrous second half, giving up 30 unanswered points, 27 of them in the second half. The offense was 0 for 6 on third down, 0 for 2 on fourth down. So luckily, somehow they got a couple of second down conversions. They had 32 rushing yards on 11 carries. So let that sink in a little
Ugh.
bit. The
Ugh.
defense was on the field way too much. The offense had the ball just about 23 minutes of the game. So the defense was on there, 37 minutes or something like that. It was a terrible performance. Finally, the defense was getting beat left and right. Gave up over 500 yards, including 223 yards on the ground, a 5.7 yard average per carry. They got run on and passed on. Baker was slicing and dicing them. Chargers now lost 3 of the last 4, as I mentioned, and the pressure is really starting to heat up. Like, this is becoming a more important game than it even was. Now, we could afford to drop this one and still win the last 2, but that puts a crap load of pressure on winning those last 2, unless some of the other teams start to really fizzle out. But the good news, the defense is still tied for first with 2 other teams. Unfortunately, one's the Broncos for least points given up at 17.6 a game. And, you know, after that, they have New England and the Raiders. That's the good news.
Yeah, that is good news. Bad news, this Broncos team's coming off a total ass kicking of the
Yep.
Indianapolis Colts. That was in Denver, but Broncos smashed them 31-13 and shut out those Colts in the second half.
Yeah.
Bo Nix had been playing pretty good football, did have a handful of interceptions in this one, 3, but
Yeah.
he did throw 3 touchdowns to go along with that, but only 130 passing yards. I don't like that. And also, Denver struggling to run the football, man. This might make you feel a little bit better, Dave.
Hope
Bo
so.
Nix was their leading rusher at 23 yards, and the next highest rusher was Jaleel McLaughlin with only 21 yards. So maybe you guys can shut down that run game. It looks like you should be able to enforce Bo Nix into some of those mistakes that he made
Yeah.
against the Colts there. But you mentioned, dude, the Broncos, one of the best defenses in the league. They are who you're tied with, coming over just under 18 points a game, 8th in total yards, 5th against the rush, 1st in sacks, 49 of those bad boys. That worries me a little bit with Justin Herbert's bum ankle. He was getting crushed last week, and now he's going to see Nick Bonito and company, the best in the biz. They also have 14 interceptions on the year as well. So the Broncos using that defense to carry them. This is going to be a close game, probably come down to one possession there. You mentioned it. Your schedule gets pretty easy after this one. A different scenario for these Broncos after you guys. It's on the road at Cincinnati and then hosting the Chiefs, although the Chiefs might be a Carson Wentz Chiefs by then.
Yeah.
So handle your business on Thursday night, and hopefully it won't matter. But you guys do have a little bit of wiggle room there, but it'd be nice to cash in another divisional win.
Yeah, and additionally, we did beat them in week 6. And we handled them in the first half, and then they snuck back in it late in that game in the fourth quarter. Really got things going. But the Chargers do have that win. And so this, even though we're a game behind them, this could propel us to be in front of them by the end of the week if we can get this W.
Yeah, it's going to be huge.
Okay, up next, we're moving to Saturday NFL action. It's the Houston Texans at the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Texans are on the road, favored by 1 in this one.
Wow, that's weird that the Texans would be favored in this one, even if it is a Carson Wentz-led Chefs at home. But I think they're going to, if Mahomes can play, he's going to go in this one. Why wait? They're hoping to maybe get Hollywood Brown back in this. And the Chiefs, I think I saw they haven't scored over 30 points this season so far.
Yeah, that's true.
But they just keep winning football games. They're winning these close games.
Yeah.
They know what it takes to do it. And as we get closer to the playoffs, look for them to start doing their Chiefs thing, when it is so important here.
Yeah.
The defense is not putting up crazy numbers like it had, not getting to the quarterback a lot. They are pretty good against the run, but they are susceptible. But this Houston Texans team, dude, they clinched the South 2 years in a row. They really struggled to run the ball last weekend, and it's going to be even tougher against these Chiefs. But this is kind of a good measuring stick game for these Texans to kind of see where they're going to be in the playoff mix there. So not as great as it was last year for these Texans, but did enough to handle their division. You go on the road, see this is going to be a good simulation of what they're probably going to get in the second round of the playoffs if they do advance. So it's a good measuring stick game. It'd go a long way to get them going. They really struggled to run the ball last week. They got to do better in that area, take some of that pressure off of CJ Stroud. But it is going to be rocking at the Arrowhead, dude.
It is. And I just checked the current point spread, and it is Chiefs -3. So correction.
So Mahomes is playing. Mahomes is playing.
Makes a difference. Chiefs 13-1, coming off that win versus the Brown. That was one of their most impressive wins, a full 14 points, double-digit win. They are, of course, as you mentioned, the number 1 seed. They have that 2-game lead over Buffalo, which is helpful. But Buffalo did beat them, so they do need to try and take care of business at the end of the season here, just to ensure that week off, and also to stay at home in Kansas City versus going to Buffalo. Huge. Projecting, of course, the AFC Championship game there. But they have been close in all of their games pretty much this season, which can be taken as they're lucky and narrowly winning, or it could be taken as this is just such a good football team that it doesn't matter where they are and when they're at that position, they can almost always find a way to get the win. Sign of a great team, a great quarterback, a great coach. Their offense is kind of like statistically in the middle of the pack, really. But when it counts is when they suddenly become unstoppable, right? The defense, though, is awesome. 5th in both yards and points at 18.5 points given up a game there. 3rd versus the run. Although they are a little susceptible against the pass. It's McDuffie and a couple of other dudes just don't throw it to McDuffie's guy, and you're in pretty good shape there. But this is going to be a good football game. Like you said, it kind of projects as a potential second round of the playoffs matchup. And it was certainly, like you said, some good measuring stick for both these teams. But the Chiefs can't screw around and lose this because, again, the ultimate seeding and getting that number 1, they'd like to be in a driver's seat for that.
Absolutely. And then we get another super tasty game on Saturday with major playoff implications. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Baltimore Ravens, and the Ravens are 6-point favorites in this one.
Ooh, okay. Well, you know what? These are both physical football teams. Steelers coming in at 10-4 off of that loss to the Eagles. That was a physical football game, the Battle of Pittsburgh there, or the Battle of Pennsylvania, let's say. Russ did not cook in that game, dude. He threw for just 128 yards and just 1 touchdown. They could not run the ball last week. They ran for just 56 yards all total. So even so, they have won 7 of the last 9 games, this Steelers squad. So 6 of those came with Russell Wilson at the helm since they made that switch. So they are solid, though. They're 9th in rushing and 10th in points at just under 25 points a game. It's all about the defense, though. here in this one, and they're going to have their hands full against this Ravens offense. That is for sure. But the defense, 9th in yards given up, 4th versus the rush, which is going to help a lot here in this particular matchup. And they're 6th in points given up, but under 19 points a game. Number 1 in the league with 30 takeaways, though, and a turnover differential of plus 18.
Wow.
So they are accustomed to taking the ball away and not giving it back. They are the 3 seed right now behind Buffalo and in front of Houston, but they already beat the Ravens. So they have like that 1-game lead in the division, and they got the tiebreaker. So this game's huge for whether or not they're going to win that division. Because after this, it's Kansas City, who likely will still need to win that football game. And then after that, Cincinnati, who we know is dangerous. So 3 tough games to finish the season for Pittsburgh. They'll be battle tested.
Yeah, and these Ravens kind of got a gift last week playing those Gigantes to put up absolutely no fight in that one.
Yeah.
Absolutely smoked in that one, 35-14, and it was a marvelous performance out of Lamar, dude. Just incredible.
Woo.
21 out of 25, 290, 5 touchdowns, 4 incompletions to 5 touchdowns. He was also almost the leading rusher at just under 11 yards a carry, had 65 yards rushing. Derrick Henry had 67 yards, but that's a nice mix there as a team. They had over 150 yards, and you want to keep some of that balance there. This is going to be a super physical game. You mentioned the Steelers got the first one. If the Ravens have any dreams of somehow scumbagging the AFC North away from the Steelers, they got to get this game on Saturday. And then next weekend, I believe that the Ravens go to Houston. So that's not going to be an easy game. Houston is a better team at home, but you better not be looking past these Steelers.
Yeah.
This is one of the most prolific offenses in the league. I'm talking about the Ravens, 3rd in passing, 2nd rushing, 1st in total yards. So handle your biz against these Steelers. Then coming up, you're at Houston, and then you host the Browns, who won't have anything to play for. So it starts here, but it is going to be tricky even to do that. But Dave, what I'm wondering is how these college football games, the triple header, will do against these 2 NFL games, both with major playoff implications. It's going to be fun to see what happens numbers wise.
It is going to be amazing to see how that shakes out. 3 college football playoffs in the first round of the college football. One of them's on Friday night. That's the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. So nice standalone positioning for them. But man, 2 awesome NFL games, 3 first ever when the playoffs at 12 for the college. It's fantastic, fantastic Saturday of football.
And
Thank God for multiple TVs.
Oh, yeah. And if that great football wasn't enough for you, we get it started on Sunday morning with the New York Giants at the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons, I wonder if this line switched a little bit. We're -10 in this one now that Penix starting. I'm assuming it's come down a little bit, but
I'm guessing so. Yeah, our lines are from yesterday, and so we'll see about that line. Check your lines, local people. Giants season, of course, has been over for a long time. They moved on from Daniel Jones, and they're trying to get him out of there without.
It's down to 8.5.
Oh, good. Okay, wow, that's closer. Last week they lost. To the Ravens, you mentioned that was their 9th in a row. Giants are one of 2 2-win teams. They currently have the 2nd pick in the draft, and they need a quarterback. The number 1 pick goes to the Raiders. They also need a quarterback. So a win here would be most detrimental indeed to this Giants' future. Up next, they do have Indy and Philly, very imminently losable football games for them. Falcons 7-7, coming in off that narrow victory over the Raiders. And prior to that, they had lost 4 straight. This season was slipping away big time, and that's, I guess, why they went on to move off of Kirk Cousins. But, I think this close to the playoffs, I just don't understand it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. They're still in 2nd place. They're just 1 game behind Detroit, who they swept, right? So if they can just get up tied with them, they'll be the team that goes to the playoffs. They're also 2 games back on that wild card spot. If Washington falters, they could sneak in that direction. And up next, they do play Washington, so they could have a direct role in helping out. And their final week is Carolina. So I just don't understand the swapping out of quarterback right now. You get this. This should be an easy win, and you get Kirk Cousins back in the. But that's not. I guess that's what happened. Look, let's see what happens. Can Penix light it up, and suddenly we're excited about them? Then they run the table here. They've got a shot at making the playoffs.
And, not to dismiss Michael Penix, one of the most
Not at
exciting.
all.
I thought he might have been my Heisman Trophy winner last year, especially that run that he made with UW.
Phenomenal.
Such a great season. So it might be the spark that they need. You're just
Yeah.
asking a lot out of a rookie, but to his
Right.
defense, he's got a ton of starts under his belt.
Yep.
And maybe if it does spark it, then that is the energy that you need. So Raheem Morris probably got a pretty good pulse on there, but it is a little bit head scratcher this late in the season. It's a gamble, but you're rolling them dice and maybe you win.
All right, up next, it's the Tennessee Titans at the Indianapolis Colts. Colts at home favored by 3.5. What do you got?
Yeah,
Casey?
we mentioned the Titans. It's going to be Mason Rudolph, maybe in the spirit of Christmas. He's going to lead them through a foggy Christmas Eve to try to get a win. But lots to work at in Tennessee. This isn't the year that they thought they'd have. So now you just want to get one of those high draft picks. The Colts, on the other hand, they're right on the outskirts of getting stuff done. They did get their asses handed to them last week by the Broncos, but a lot of that was self-inflicted.
Totally.
Wounds. Taylor dropping the ball. I'm so sick of seeing that crap in the game. It's like, what are these morons thinking, dude?
Yeah.
Get to the end zone, then you can celebrate, do whatever you want. It's not cool to drop it at the line. I don't.
No,
it's dumb as shit, dude. It's like touchdowns are not easy to come by. Quit doing that stuff. Not playing really good defense for these Colts. Not throwing the ball really well. Anthony Richardson is coming along. I think he just needs to get more starts under his belt. So he's getting there. But last 3 games, very winnable for the Colts. Hosting the Titans, at the Giants, then hosting the Jags. But they got to sweep those to have any shot at getting in. If they lose on Sunday, those last 2 aren't going to matter. But 3 winnable games, and then you see where you're at the end of those.
Yeah, that's scary. They could definitely run the table there.
Yeah. All right, up next, Dave, we have our Los Angeles Rams at the New York Jets, and the Rams are 3-point favorites on the road.
Yeah, the Rams 8-6. They beat the Bills 2 weeks ago, 44-42, and then last week beat the Niners 12-6. So they can win in any which way, right? The Rams are 3-1 in the division, so they have 2 divisional games left that are here on the schedule. They are tied in the division with Seattle, who they already beat, and they play in the final week of the season. So if they can go on a run and win all the remaining games, they'll end up 5-1 divisional, and they'll be in the playoffs. Up next for them, Arizona, and then, like I said, back to Seattle again. So that last game against Seattle, if they slip up, that one will certainly be for the division. The Jets, on the other hand, 4-10. After getting a W last week, credit to them beating the Jags. It was a close one. But other than that, the season has been a disaster. Head coach GM gone. It's going to be interesting to see if they want to keep Aaron Rodgers around. He's very expensive to cut or to keep, and they're going to have a new regime in there. So is it time to start over with the new quarterback? We'll see what they decide in this offseason. They currently pick 8th in this year's draft coming up.
Yeah, not the success that they thought they were going to have.
Nope.
I started watching The Enigma last night on the Netflix about Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Started it late, so I fell asleep about 15 minutes in. So I don't know if that's the content or I'm just a sleepy guy and it was late at night. I'm going to give it another shot, though, and try to peel that ayahuasca onion just a little bit.
I was going to say, maybe a little hallucinogenics will help keep that thing interesting.
It'll make it much more interesting. Maybe I need to try that.
Okay. All right. Up next is the Arizona Cardinals at the Carolina Panthers. Casey, the Cardinals are on the road favored by 4.5.
Yeah, Dave. And when I tried to get on board with the Cardinals, they did what the Cardinals do and just
disappoint.
Yeah, it is very disappointing. That being said, they're 7-7. They have an outside shot to get in this thing.
Yeah.
And the way that the Cowboys dismantled the Panthers last week gives these Cards a little bit of hope there. Trey McBride still looking for that first touchdown, Dave. Only 89 receptions, looking for it. So
unbelievable.
Yeah, it's crazy that he hasn't gotten it there yet. But the Cardinals, man, it's a frustrating team, Dave.
Yeah.
Obviously, we talked about that
They're
season on.
talented. They can get it done, but then they just, oh man, they
Yeah,
underachieve sometimes.
very frustrating there. So this is their last gimme. They're at Carolina, then they're at the Los Angeles Rams, and then they host the Niners. Probably have to win all 3 games to make that final push into
Yeah.
the playoffs there. So I don't know if that's going to happen. And the Panthers, they had been playing some good football until they got blowed out last week. So still not sure if Bryce Young is the answer moving forward. I think everything will be on the table when the season is done. But yeah, they're no closer to being a winner than they were before they traded all those picks to the Bears.
Yeah, I was going to say at least they're going to have their picks for the most part this year, unlike last year. And they're going to have some high picks in each round as well. So we'll see how they can do. One of 5 3-win teams are the Panthers. So we'll see where they end up picking.
Well, speaking of those Bears, David, is the Detroit Rock City Lions at the Chicago Bears, and the Lions are 6.5-point favorites in this one.
Yeah, Lions 2-12 after having lost last week for the first time since week 2, losing 48-42 to the Bills. Goff threw for nearly 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, as we mentioned in the fantasy domination section, but it was not enough in this football game. The ground game was ineffective. They only ran for 48 yards, and obviously Montgomery going down is the big bummer there. The Bills on the other side, though, ran for almost 200 yards and passed for over 350. So their defense really got pushed around there. Offensively, they still are number 2 in yards and number 1 in points, the Lions. So that is a very balanced group. They're second in passing and 6th in rushing, but obviously a little depleted now with Montgomery not in the mix. Jahmyr Gibbs is a heck of a back, though, but that was a 1-2 punch that was almost second to none in the league. Defensively, they're 7th in points given up there at just over 20 points a game. So Lions are the number 1 seed in the NFC, winning the tiebreaker there against Philadelphia and Minnesota, even though they're tied, they're same record. So every win is going to be crucial if they want to keep that number 1 seed. And up next, it's the San Francisco Niners and then the Minnesota Vikings in a real interesting last game of the season there, isn't it? Bears on the other side, 4-10, playing okay, just not well enough to win. They've lost 8 in a row. This is divisional, so anything could happen, but look for the Lions to win. They've got to win this one. Like I said, too much at stake. Really, that number 1 seed is so tasty with the bye.
Yeah, and Caleb tried to do one of his USC scramble for 40 yards and then just huck it last year. Got blasted.
Yeah.
He's going to throw that one out of the playbook. He's learning, but this was everybody's darling to go to the playoffs at the beginning of the season. Such a talented squad, and here they are at 4-10, looking for a head coach and a lot of other things too.
Yeah. All right. Up next, Cleveland Browns at the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals hanging on for dear life at 6-8 for their playoff hopes. They are 7.5-point favorites in this one. Got to get this W.
Yeah, Stefanski's seen enough. DTR is going to get the start on this weekend on the road against these Bengals. And, dude, it might be another year that the Bengals just screwed around too much at the beginning and didn't quite get it done. They really are wasting an MVP type season for Joe Burrow. They're number 1 in passing. Yeah, 30th in rushing yards, dude. So they got to have more balance, and they just have to have a little bit of defense in this one, man. That defense has been absolutely atrocious. They are 31st in the league, Dave, giving up almost 28 points a game, giving up almost 367 yards a game, and giving up almost 240 yards passing a game. So they don't get after the quarterback, only 25 sacks. So that even if they make the playoffs with that defense, they're not going to have a lot going. But if they can find a way to beat these stupid Brownies next week it is the Denver Broncos, who that's a team they're trying to catch. And
Yeah.
then the last week is at Pittsburgh, who may or may not have something to play for, but that's a divisional game. So, it's going to be grimy no matter what. A month from now, we're going to look back on this Bengals team and say, oh, if it was a disappointment or they found a way to sneak into the playoffs.
Wow.
It feels like they're going to come up just a little bit short, but
yeah. Well, that's definitely a disappointment for such a phenomenal team, offensively at least, to watch.
Absolutely.
All right, up next. I guess.
Let me jump in on this one,
Yeah,
Dave. No
take
worries.
this one.
Yeah. This is an NFC East battle. It's the Philadelphia Eagles at the Washington Commandos, and the Eagles are 3.5-point favorites in this one.
Eagles are 12-2, having beaten Pittsburgh last week. They have now won 10 in a row on the season. Very, very good. Number one run team, 6th in yards overall. Tied for 8th in scoring at 26.4 points per game. And defensively, they're number 1 in yards given up. Tied for first in points now at 17.6, part of that 3-way tie with the Broncos and Chargers. They are number 1 versus the pass, 7th versus the run, 10th in sacks at 39. So just a really well-rounded, balanced football team. And obviously, they've been on a tear, winning 10 in a row here. They can't, everything's right in front of them. If they can run the table here, beat the Commanders, then they're going to have Dallas and the Giants next. Very winnable games there, right? They just hoping they can get all those 3 wins right there. And then Detroit slips up. They could end up with the top seed in the bye. So huge games left on the schedule here for the Eagles, starting with this Commanders football team this week.
Yeah, and the Commanders, I think everybody jumped a little bit too much when they got out to the early start, beat some crappy teams, and coming back down to earth just a little bit, had a good chance of losing against the Saints last week. Saints lined up to go for 2, and I just couldn't get it done there. But right now, the Commanders are still holding on to that last playoff spot, but they've had a lot of injuries. They're not playing that great against on defense. Matter of fact, they're 25th against the run, giving up over 130 yards a game. That's bad news with Saquon Barkley coming to town to play these guys with so much on the line for Philly. But after that, they host the Atlanta Falcons, and then it's at Dallas. So probably going to have to win 2 of the 3 to hold on to that 7th seed. I'm not sure where everybody stacks up and what the tiebreakers are, but getting into the playoffs, even losing the first round, would be a win for these guys. But still lots of work between now and then to get done. Need a ton of help on the defensive side of the ball. McLaurin and Daniels is a great combination so far. Look to build on that. Eckler's done for the year. They're missing his presence in that offense too. So this is a team that's headed in the right direction. I'm just not sure that they are there yet.
It doesn't seem so, but like you said, if they can hold on, get that last playoff spot, that experience, I think, will benefit them in the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving it on to the late slot. It is the Minnesota Vikings at the Seattle Seahawks. Vikings on the road, favored by 3 in a big game here in the NFC.
Yeah, dude, and these Vikings, bro, they're on the outskirts. Not even the outskirts, dude. A couple things go right. Comes down to week 18. They could be the number 1 seed out of nowhere, dude.
Yeah.
And you got to wonder how much Sam Darnold is going to make. Is it going to be in Minnesota for another couple years, or will he move on and become the star? There's a lot of quarterback-hungry teams out there, but just love the way that he's been playing football. And obviously with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, 2 of the best to do it in the biz. Aaron Jones has come over and has been a real nice addition. They weren't able to run the ball last year, and he's really
made a huge difference.
Yeah, and then you flip it over that Brian Flores defense. This guy is going to be in consideration to get some head coaching gigs too. So there's a lot to like about the Minnesota defense. 4th in sacks, 1st in interceptions. So, and we mentioned it, dude. They are playing potentially for that that number 1 seed in the NFC. You can't mess around. Win this stupid game this week against the Seahawks. and then after that, hosting Green Bay, and then at Detroit. So they're going to have,
Wow. They got it right in front of them.
yeah, that all three of those teams and potentially the Seahawks are going to make the playoffs, but they could have a major voice in how the NFC North goes. Beat these Seahawks, and then let's see what happens the last 2 weeks. But overall, I love what's happening for Sam Darnold, and I love this Vikings defense. And they would love to stay indoors for their playoff.
I was going to say, if they find a way to run the table here, they will have earned that number one spot. And the way Darnold is playing under Kevin O'Connell is so exciting. No doubt about it. Seahawks on the other side, they're 8-6. They lost last week to the Packers. They got handled by the Pack. In fact, they are tied with the Rams in record, but they lose the tiebreaker because they already lost to them. So currently, they are outside the playoffs, and their playoff hopes are in serious jeopardy, dude. With this game hosting the Vikings here, who are, as you mentioned, just playing really exceptionally well. And the Seahawks can't afford to lose this football game. Mm-hmm. They need essentially to run the table, including a crucial game in Week 18 against the Rams, right? So that could be for the division and the playoffs, because one team's going to make it out of that division. So they need to continue to get a couple of wins, or the Rams need to kind of tank out a game or two to get those guys to the position where that last game of the season is a winner-take-all game. And then they beat the Rams, and boom, they're in the playoffs. But again, right now, it's looking a little sketchy because this Vikings team coming to town is playing great football right now.
Yeah, and maybe Chardonnay is the call there. He's been playing great since KW3's been down, but Gino's got that gimpy ankle, and
he's supposed to be good to go. And Charbonnet has played exceptionally well in the last, certainly a couple weeks ago where he really lit it up.
Sam Howell really struggled last week, so they got to get Gino in there. All right, Dave, up next is New England Patriots at the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are favored at home by 14.
Whew, big spread. Patriots 3-11 coming off their fourth straight loss. This one to the Cardinals. Patriots are one of 5 3-win teams, but they hold the highest pick of all of them, currently picking third. They need to build around Drake May. Good news, they've apparently got their quarterback, and the teams that pick in front of them 1 and 2 look to be going quarterback. So they'll likely have their pick of all the other positions. So that could bode very, very well for them for building towards their future. They're the Bills on the other side, 11-3. They beat the Lions in that thriller 48-42. And then the week before that, if you don't forget, man, they lost to the Rams 44-42. So they are a team that is all about fireworks right now. They won 8 of their last 9. Josh Allen, again, spectacular last week, 430 yards for Josh Allen on offense, 4 touchdowns. James Cook ran for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game. The Bills, you ask yourselves, can they overcome a defense that's giving up so many points? And, defense wins championships and all that. And here we are heading towards the playoffs. But in all, their defense is 12th in giving up points at 22.1 points per game. So it's not a terrible disaster. They just, been in some crazy shootouts of late. And another thing that's awesome for this squad, they're tied for number 1 in the league with the turnover differential, plus 18. So they hold on to the football and they get it back on the defensive side. Good news for them also, very winnable remaining schedule. They're playing the Jets and New England another time. So get this game against New England. It's a little, Jet sandwich on New England bread. It should be piece of cake to run the table here and get on into the playoffs on a nice winning streak.
Yeah, Bills they just need a little help from Kansas City, man, to see if those Chiefs can lose. It's going to be nobody wants to go through Buffalo on the road to the Super Bowl. So, yeah, but you mentioned that defense, dude. That's a lot of points last couple of weeks. It's
little
see what happens. Yeah, but I'm going to go out on a limb, Dave, and say that the Patriots are not going to score 40 points this weekend. Just putting it out there.
Yeah, this is exactly what the defense needed. Game against the Patriots. All right, moving on. It's San Francisco 49ers at the Miami Dolphins. Both these teams coming in at 6-8 on the fringes at best. Dolphins at home favored by a point and a half.
Yeah, both these teams really disappointing. Had to deal with a bunch of injuries. These Niners,
Yeah.
man, they might miss the playoffs, dude. They're going to need a lot of help to get in there. Just so many injuries on their third running back. Purdy's been okay, but just don't have that flow that they've had. There's even talk that Shanahan could be on the hot seat. It seems
What?
like be crazy to me, but
Yeah.
he's had a lot of okay success, but not gotten over the top.
Yeah.
You know, is that where he peaks out, or has it just been circumstance? Who knows? But
Right.
those questions are coming up, man. That Niner fan base is a little bit angry that this team hasn't been able to get over the top. And
Yeah.
then you throw it over to these Dolphins too. A better team with Tua back there, but just sloppy play last week. We're kind of overwhelmed by that Texans defense here,
Mhm.
but just need more production out of the offense. I think they only had 12 points last week. So they're going to need some good stuff to happen to try to sneak that final wild card spot in there. So they're going to have to beat these Niners to do that. And even if they do, I'm not sure that they're going to be able to get in there. Very doable schedule, though, after the Niners. It's at Cleveland, it's at the Jets, but already sitting there with that 8th loss, Dave, that might be too much.
Yeah, it is definitely a shame for both of these squads who certainly had playoff hopes to start the season. But like you mentioned, injuries have been key, and both of them looking like a little bit too far behind the teams in their respective conferences to make a run. Even if they run the table for either of the teams and gets to 9-8, it just might not be enough.
Yeah, Mike Dana might be on the hot seat too. It seems crazy, but weirder stuff has happened.
Yep.
All right, Dave. Ugh. Get through this one quick, bro. It's the Jags at the Raiders, and this is a pick 'em.
Yeah, this is a game that both teams want to lose
Yeah.
actively. Jaguars are 3-11, losing to the Jets last week. No Trevor Lawrence, but he'll be back. But will Doug Peterson? We don't know about that. Jags currently picked 4th in the draft. Up next, losable games against Tennessee and Indy. So look for them to stay at 3 wins if they can lose this one. The Raiders on the other side. They are 2-12 after last week's loss to Atlanta. They've now lost 10 in a row. They look terrible, but they almost won last week, actually. They're one of 2-win teams, and they currently hold the number 1 pick in the draft. They need a quarterback, and the team right behind them, the Giants, also needs a quarterback. They cannot afford to accidentally win this game. Up next after this, they'll play the Saints and then the Chargers. So they have a pretty good shot, both of these teams, of losing out. Except this game stands in the way of that happening. So who's going to lose?
Someone's going to lose, Dave. I guarantee it. Well, I can't guarantee that actually because we don't know that for certain. They could tie, but
I don't know how that would impact everything. All right, moving on to Sunday Night Football. It's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Dallas Cowboys, Casey. Your Dallas Cowboys are hosting, but the Bucs are playing hot, and they're on the road favored by 4.
yeah, and that's a good reason because the Cowboys, I think, are 1-6 at home this year. But Dave, it's hard to root against these Bucks. You know, I like my Baker Mayfield, and we
Man, is
saw
he good.
firsthand what this guy can do when they get healthy, man. And lots to like about this Buccaneer squad. Bucky Irving has come in and has had
The ultimate Buck, Bucky.
oh
Woo!
yeah, he's bucking other teams up left and right.
Yeah.
The nice 1-2 combo with him and White there at running back, but just such a dynamic skill set, dude. I really like what he's bringing to the offense. But Baker Mayfield, not really in the MVP mix, but he kind of should be in the MVP mix, dude. He is playing some great football, the best of his career.
Yeah.
He's really got it going in Tampa, dude. And they have, 4 of their losses with 6 or fewer points, so they could have a couple more wins on their schedule already, but they're probably going to have to win out to make sure that the Falcons don't catch them because they have lost both games to them at Dallas this weekend. Then they host the Panthers, and then they host the Saints there. So it is looking more and more like these Bucks will have a home playoff game. And then for the Cowboys, dude, just too many injuries, and now it's getting too little too late. What I did like about them is the way they responded and kicking the crap out of a bad Carolina team, but who had been
Yeah.
playing pretty good football, but coming off the disappointment that was Monday night, losing the way they did to the Bengals on a short week on the road, coming out and just taking care of business against the Panthers. You like to see it. That tells me that Mike hasn't lost this locker room, and you're starting to see with the other Mike Zimmer, what the defense could be with some healthy pieces there. Now, you did get the bad news that Trayvon Diggs is going to be out. It looks like it might be 8 months. So we're not sure where that's going to put him next year when he comes back. Was struggling to get back from the ACL this year. So I'm a little worried about that. But DeMarvion Overshown had
Big bummer.
successful surgery this week.
Oh, good.
They're still projecting him maybe the end of next year, but at least the surgery went well. It's something to look forward to. And Micah Parsons, since he's been back, I think he's leading the league in pressures. He had a tremendous impact on the game, had a couple of sacks there. So see how these last couple weeks go for this team. I thought we were going to run Mike McCarthy out of there, but the way this team has kind of rallied together, you can't just fire people and be like, okay, bring in the next guy. It's going to be much better.
Yeah.
Sometimes keeping that cohesion is good. That a lot of young guys got reps this year. We're starting to see the benefit of that. So I think we do need to see how they play these last few weeks before we can determine that. And CD, I think he needs 22 catches to have the most ever through the first few years of the season. I think this is will be his 5th year. So there's a record out there for CD, and that makes it pretty impressive, being that he's had the different quarterback play. Oh, and one more. Rico Dowdle is starting to play some really good football. Cowboys running the ball much better. That's why they're starting to have a little bit of success.
Yeah, watch out, Casey. Tampa Bay's coming in with purpose, dude, and they are tough. Word of advice: cover Mike Evans for starters, because he was an absolute beast last week, and he always is an impact guy. Tough about Trayvon Diggs and not being there, but the way that Bulls came after an injured Herbert last week, sending 5 and 6 dudes all second half.
Bulls likes to blitz.
I think there were 10 plays in a row where 6 or more guys came, and it was a disaster. So look out for Bulls. The dude, when there's blood in the water, oh man.
Yeah, and on the flip side, Baker Mayfield from Austin, just outside of Dallas, is going to have a ton of family and friends in the house. You know he wants to put on a show.
Big show.
All right, Monday night, baby. It's the New Orleans Saints at the Green Bay Packers, and the Packers are 13.5-point favorites.
Okay, how about the Saints? 5-9. They lost last week in a close one. That failed 2-point conversion at the end. Give them credit for that. They benched Hayner along the way for Spencer Rattler. He played pretty well for them in that game. They got a big-time decision to make in the offseason about Derek Carr, whether they move on. A new head coach coming in there. Do they want that Carr contract, or do they want to kind of start fresh? Maybe there's another quarterback out there that they would look to acquire. They currently have the 10th pick in the draft. Up next, they play Las Vegas and then Tampa to finish the season. Packers, they beat the Seahawks last week. They got their record to 10-4. Tough division to play in, and they're in 3rd place with their 10-4 record. They've won 8 of the last 10 games, only losing to the Lions twice in that time span. The last prior to that, also in the division, it was to Minnesota. So they're 2 games behind Detroit and Minnesota, so that's not happening. Forget the division. As for the wild card, they are the 6th seed with a game lead on Washington and a 2-game lead over the Seahawks. So they just need a couple more wins. They should be in, and they are going to be a dangerous team in the playoffs. So this week it's the Saints, a team they should handle. But if they don't, it could get tricky because, again, up next, Minnesota, and then after that, Chicago.
Yeah, man, don't mess around. Beat a wounded Saints team. You're at home.
Yeah.
And the good thing about these Packers is their game travels, baby. They're running the ball well. They play great defense. So they might have to go up against either Minnesota or Detroit, or maybe even those dirty Eagles that they lost to week 1 down in Sao Paulo.
Woo!
It's going to be good. Oh, so good. And speaking of so good, so many ways you can check out this kick-ass Football Dudes podcast, The Trend Zone, now available for subscription. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music.
Yeah, also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like us on Instagram and Facebook. Follow us on X at Football Dudes LA. Make sure you tag us across all social media platforms.
And while you're out there surfing the interwebs, go ahead and bookmark footballdudes.com. That is going to do it for this episode of the Trend Zone. We're going to take next week off, hang with the family. We suggest you do the same. There will be plenty of football to get us through, but we are going to spend that time trying to get off the naughty list. So that is going to do it for this episode of the Trend Zone. We're not the suits that talk football. We're the dudes that know football. For Dave, I'm Casey. Merry Christmas to all the football heads out there, and we will see you guys soon.